This is Sam from BNS About Movies. It's a special weekend. It's time for the Drive-In Monster-Rama. So whether you're able to make it, maybe you're listening to this on the way to the event or on your way home, or if you can't make it, maybe you'd like to do it yourself and know about the movies. That's what we're doing this week. First night of the Drive-In Monster-Rama, which is, as always, at the Riverside Drive-In Theater in Vandergrift, PA. The first night is all Roger Corman films. Second night, all Italian films. Let's go through all of them. Let's see if we can do them all in one quick little burst.
True terror is the soft, cold caress of the raven's wing.
Ooh. Your hands are so cold.
A woman whose desires transcend reality. The mysterious powers of black magic. These you will explore.
Now, what is it you need? You got some dried blood or a bat in the house?
The raven will take you careening through the darkest of dangers, into the ominous mystery of a master magician's evil castle.
Afraid, my dear? I offer you a choice. The secret of your hand manipulations, or this against this.
Well, don't just stand there.
Do something. This is no answer.
Very well, then. A duel to the death.
The Raven from 1963 is the fifth of Roger Corman's Poe movies. It was written by Richard Matheson, and of course based on the poem The Raven. It has an astounding cast: Vincent Price, Peter Lorre, Boris Karloff, who was also in the 1935 adaptation. And they're all sorcerers, locked in magical combat with each other. Is that magical with a M-A-G-I-C-K-A-L? Who's to say? Matheson said, after I heard they wanted to make a movie out of a poem, I thought it was an utter joke. Comedy was really the only way to go through it. As Dr. Erasmus Craven, Vincent Price pines for his lost wife Lenore, played by Hazel Court. He's visited by a raven that he helped to transform back into the human form of Dr. Bedloe, Peter Lorre. Now Bedloe wants revenge on the man who turned him into this beast, Dr. Scarabus, Boris Karloff, and gets Craven to come with him, claiming he's seen Lenore's ghost in his enemy's castle. Also along for the ride are Craven's daughter Estelle and Bedloe's son Rexford, a very young Jack Nicholson. It all turns out Lenore is alive and faked her death to be Scarabus' mistress. Doesn't even bat an eye when the evil wizard tortures her daughter. Of course, a duel between magicians is the only way this can all end. Lorre was given to improv, which Price grew to enjoy. Nicholson loved, and Karloff hated. Between that and the goofy Latin phrases that magicians say when they cast spells, this movie always makes me laugh. The second movie we'll be seeing is The Terror.
Come in. I surprised her in her room. She was not alone. With my own hands, I killed her.
Starring Boris Karloff.
Take this gun. Escort this gentleman from the castle. If he resists, kill him.
The Terror. His evil mystic powers go beyond man's wildest imaginings. terror, empowered to avenge, to reward, to transform.
I do love you.
Is she a blood and flesh beauty a man can enjoy?
I am possessed of the dead.
Or is she a gossamer myth, created by a madman's distorted desires?
Take your life as you took mine, and bring us together forever.
Join Boris Karloff, the Frankenstein monster of all horror motion pictures, in his most blood-chilling screen experience.
Terror is from 1963. In his book, How I Made 100 Movies in Hollywood and Never Lost a Dime, Corman went into detail on this film, an infamous one in his career, saying it began as a challenge to shoot most of a Gothic film in 2 days using leftover sets from The Raven. It turned into the longest production of my career, an ordeal that required 5 directors and 9 months to complete. So yeah, Corman is listed as the director, but it's also worked on by Francis Ford Coppola, Dennis Jacob, Monty Hellman, Jack Hill, even Jack Nicholson.
Here's Johnny!
It all started with a rained-out tennis game. As Corman decided since the sets were still up for 2 days and he had access to Boris Karloff, nobody really knew what the movie would be about, but why not shoot one? Other than, we have this castle, we have this set, we have Boris Karloff. The icon of horror had no clue that these 2 days would end up with him sitting in a vat of cold water. The funny thing is that AIP paid for the sets for The Raven, but Corman was making this film for himself. He never asked if he could do it. He just started shooting. And Samuel Z. Arkoff knew something was up when at the wrap party, all the sets hadn't been struck down yet. Then again, he knew that Corman was probably going to come to him to distribute the film. Other directors finished the film instead of Corman, as this was a non-union job and he was a union director. The beach scenes were shot by Coppola, along with Hill and Gary Kurtz, most of which were unusable as Coppola didn't tell the cameraman they were shooting night shots, and he went way over. 11 days of shooting. That's like 2 Roger Corman movies worth of shooting, maybe more. Dennis Jacob went to shoot Hoover Dam for the water scenes while also working on his thesis film, but that's not anything that Corman could get angry about, seeing as how he was shooting another movie on another movie's budget. Monty Hellman and Jack Hill finished the film, but then Corman tried to put it together and felt like nothing worked and it was kind of boring. So he went back and he shot a lot of new scenes to make the movie work tighter. In a lot of those reshoots, you can see Jack Nicholson's wife at the time, Sandra Knight, is noticeably pregnant. She's not in the early shots. Meanwhile, Corman had promised Karloff $15,000 if this movie made $150,000. Well, it didn't, but he got another idea. If Karloff would appear in Targets, he would get that cash. So Corman told Peter Bogdanovich it would finance his film if he shot 20 minutes of new Karloff footage, added in 20 minutes of this movie, and then shot 40 minutes with a new cast. Bogdanovich used footage from this movie at the beginning of the film as Karloff watches himself and proclaims the movie he's watching is terrible. French soldier Andre, Jack Nicholson, has left his men after a battle gone wrong and is rescued by Helene, a woman who looks just like the dead wife of a baron. 20 years before, after he found his wife with another man, that baron, played by Boris Karloff, killed her, and had his servant Stefan, played by Dick Miller, kill the man he found her with. A witch named Katrina has been sending the ghost of the Baron's wife to torment him, begging that he kills himself and joins her in death. That's because he thinks that the Baron killed her son Eric, when the truth, here comes a spoiler, is that Eric killed the Baron and has gone so insane that he thinks that he is the Baron and killed Eric. By the time we learn this, it's too late. The witch tries to enter the castle and runs to save her son, but goes across consecrated ground and burns alive. And just like Shakespeare, pretty much everybody dies except our young lovers, except Helene is a ghost too. She turns into a corpse after a romantic kiss with Andre. Speaking of saving money, AIP used to send its composers to more inexpensive European studios. This movie had a small budget, but Ronald Stein was able to record both this movie and the score for Dementia 13 all in one setting with a 90-piece orchestra. It's not a perfect movie, but Nicholson had great memories of it, saying, "I had a great time, I paid the rent. They don't make movies like The Terror anymore." The third movie of the first night will be Little Shop of Horrors again.
Feed me food.
Oh, take it easy, Dracula. What do you think I'm carrying here, my dirty laundry? where a man-eating talking plant gives homicide something to think about.
I didn't do it.
Do what?
Whatever.
Ever see this man?
Man, see picture.
Why are you so nervous?
Oh, boy, you kiss good, Audrey.
Oh, I guess I just have a good kisser.
Now you will do as I say.
Yes, master.
You will go out and find me some food.
Yes, master.
What's the matter? Don't you like me?
Too bony.
Too bony? Nobody ever told me that before.
Beef is better than veal.
Ah, you're such a dodo. What do you call this? Chopped liver?
Directed by Corman, written by Charles Griffith, and made under the name The Passionate People Eater. This film was made in 2 days for $28,000 on the same sets as A Bucket of Blood. It played double features with Black Sunday and Last Woman on Earth, then became a cult film, and is aired repeatedly on TV before becoming a public domain film. That's why any Mill Creek set that you bought or any cheap VHS tape you bought back in the day, you'll probably get Little Shop of Horrors. Gravis Mushnick, Mel Wells, and his two employees, Audrey and Seymour, run a flower shop that has seen better days. When Seymour screws up an order for Dennis Phineas Farb, John Shaner, he's fired until he shows his new plant, which he claims he grew from a seed that he was given by a Japanese gardener. He names it Audrey too. Before you know it, you've seen the movie, right? It lives on human blood and then people. Yet it brings people into the store and becomes famous. And now Gravis calls Seymour son. Of course, Gravis eventually sees Seymour feeding a dead homeless man. It was an accident, but still at Audrey too. And then Dr. Farb, who he's killed in self-defense. But the crimes are getting worse. And the police and the Society of Silent Flower Observers of Southern California want to give Seymour an award. All he wants is the original Audrey. But the plant hypnotizes him and makes him continue to bring him food. This movie was written in a coffee house. Corman said, "We ended up at a place where Sally Kellerman, before she became a star, was a waitress. Chuck and I vie with each other, trying to top each other's sardonic and subversive ideas, appealing to Sally as a referee as she sat down at the table with us, and the three of us worked out the rest of the story together." Again, this is another early Jack Nicholson movie. The actor said, "I went into the shoot knowing I had to be very quirky because Roger originally hadn't wanted me. In other words, I couldn't play it straight. So it's just a lot of weird stuff that I thought would make it funny." And as you know, went on to become even bigger when this was made into a musical, played Broadway, and was remade in 1986. There was even a cartoon called Little Shop that was on Fox Kids, and Roger Corman was a consultant. That is pretty amazing. He was so sure that this movie would not do well, however, he never got a copyright, which is why it's in public domain. But if you're wondering, there's a scene where Dick Miller eats the flower. That he really did eat that flower. The last movie on the final night.
On an isolated Pacific island, the Navy lands a party of daring scientists to solve the mysterious disappearance of an entire atomic research team. Strange horror strikes first at the plane that brought them. And then, earth-shattering tremors begin tearing the island to shreds.
Okay, Professor. How are the crabs blowing up the island?
I am not sure. But imagine they are able to send out arcs of heat. They are packed with it.
They can melt and fuse parts of the caverns, explode the materials contained, and bring about the slides. There used to be ridges there for maybe 2 miles.
Now there's less than half a city block. Soon we will have nowhere to run.
Fathoms deep among the terrors of the mighty Pacific, daring skin divers brave undersea perils that stagger the imagination. Here are monsters with razor-sharp claws that hand grenades and dynamite cannot stop. Or searing fire and flame. No or tons of crushing rocks as mankind faces its last desperate chance.
Again, this is the last Roger Corman movie. He directed it. This played doubles with Not of This Earth. A group of scientists and sailors land on a remote Pacific Ocean island as a search party for a previous expedition that disappeared there without a trace. While they're there, the scientists plan on studying the impact of nuclear tests on the Bikini Atoll on the island's ecosystem. Charles B. Griffith wrote this, and he said he was conned into it. Roger came up to me and said, "I want to make a picture called Attack of the Giant Crabs." I asked, does it have to have atomic radiation? He responded, yes. He said it was an experiment. I want suspense or action in every scene. No kind of scene without suspense or action. His trick was saying it was an experiment, which it wasn't. He just didn't want to bother cutting out the other scenes, which he would do. Corman, ever the one who seemed nice, said, I talked to Chuck Griffith about this. Chuck and I worked out a general storyline before he went to work on the script, and I told him, I don't want any scene in this picture that doesn't either end with a shock or the suspicion that a shocking event is about to take place. And that's how the finished script read. Dr. Carl Weigand, geologist James Carson, and biologist Jules Deveau, Martha Hunter, and Dale Drewer, all up against it here. Probably some of them aren't going to survive, including a sailor named Tate, played by Griffith, who also directed some of the action scenes. Not only does this have giant crabs, they're also telepathic giant crabs. There's a really great chance you saw this movie on Chiller Theater, or if you're old enough to be a monster kid, it's played a ton, but it'll be playing at the drive-in. And this is everything for Friday night. These are probably the movies to enjoy along with pizza burger or a funnel cake. There's great food at the Riverside. They always have amazing food. And thanks to Gene and George for putting this on every year. And now let's get to Saturday night. Up first, oh my gosh, The Beyond. And what can you say about Lucio Fulci that hasn't already been said?
You are Liza, aren't you? Yes. My name is Emily. I've been looking for you. Go back to where you came from and hurry. Leave this place. "60 years ago, everybody in this hotel disappeared. Every last person. A painter called Spike, who lived here, closeted in his room, had found a key.
Tell me, with all those accidents, you think you'll give it up now?
I couldn't do that if I wanted to. Well, I won't give in. Who else is here?
There's nobody here.
I can feel a presence. Somebody else is in here.
Oh, some weird story that Emily told me about room 36.
Emily? Who's Emily?
The blind girl that lives in the old house by the crossroads.
Yes! That house has been abandoned for the last 50 years.
But that's not true. It's not possible. I was there.
This house was constructed on one of this. to him who opens one of the 7 gateways to hell, because through that gateway, evil will invade the world.
This is one of my favorite films, so please indulge me. This starts in flashback, 1927, Louisiana, the Seven Doors Hotel. A mob is convinced that an artist is a warlock, so they crucify him, opening one of the 7 doors of death, allowing the dead into our world. Coincidentally, Lisa, our heroine from New York City, inherits the hotel and starts renovations. During them, she opens the door. From there on out, Fulci embraces both his best and worst impulses. The only way I could fully explain the craziness of the film is if I just kind of tell you each insane moment in one long run-on sentence. We get a good breath. Here we go. Joe the plumber, not the political one, discovers a flooded cellar and gets his eye ripped out. And if you're playing a Fulci drinking game based on eye injuries and women being killed, prepare to get super drunk. A blind woman, Emily, and her dog Dickie inform Lisa that she should stop. Joe's wife and daughter try to claim his corpse, but the mother has her face slowly burned off by acid, and her daughter becomes one of the undead. Zombies appear, and then until she is shot by a bullet that sends her entire head spraying all over the screen in one of the most shocking child kills in pretty much all of film. Emily tells Lisa to never enter room 36, but of course she goes in room 36 and discovers the ancient book Ibon and the still crucified artist. And Emily isn't real. She's trapped in the past and reaching out to us now, but her dog Dickie goes bad and tears her throat out.
Attack, Dickie! Attack, Dickie, attack! Dickie! Don't let them get near me! Attack, Dickie! Attack! Attack, Dickie! Chase them away! Chase them away! Dickie, attack! Get rid of them, Dickie! Get them! Attack, Dickie! Attack! Get them!
A dude falls off a ladder in a bookstore, gets paralyzed, and has the slowest death ever. A face eaten by spiders. Joe the plumber rises from the bathtub in a shot that rips off Diabolique and pushes a woman's head through a nail, her eye being destroyed as a result. So drink twice, one for female death, once for eye. Whew, man, so much happens you may feel like you're in a dream, and that's the way I see this movie. A voyage from one terror to another as one experiences nightmares that don't seem to end. I actually see a lot of similarities to Jodorowsky and Fulci's work. There's no nuance, it's all eyeballs popping out, faces exploding, death upon death, but it's there. Fulci saw this film as having the closest to a happy ending he would film. I'm not sure I agree, but it is memorable. If you haven't seen it, why should I spoil it for you? This film was butchered, which is probably an irony, for years with a heavily censored version in the US known as 7 Doors of Death.
Walk through this door and enter a nightmare of supernatural horror. 7 Doors of Death. Evil's fatal omen.
Who else is here? There's nobody here. I can feel a presence. Somebody else is in here.
7 Doors of Death. Kim Hankel, author of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, calls it terrifying, unique, serene, one of the best horror films I've ever seen.
Mommy. Arthur?
On a gloomy, rain-swept night, a ferocious battle is being fought between 2 girls and a vicious, deranged fiend on a murderous rampage. Paralyzed with fear and on the verge of hysteria, they try to escape its chillingly merciless savagery. They know it's there, behind these doors, the 7 Doors of Death. These doors conceal a hideous poltergeist waiting to unleash its sinister revenge.
Now look, Emily. I've lived in New York all my life. And if there's one thing I've learned not to believe in, it's ghosts.
Seven Doors of Death. Your blood will run cold as the icy fingers of death tighten their stranglehold.
I must be going crazy. Good boy. Good boy, Dickie. You made them go away.
has run out. Death is erupting, violent, berserk, untamed. Can anyone survive? Enter, if you dare, and see 7 Doors of Death. Terrifying, unique, one of the best horror films I've ever seen. Kim Henkel, author of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, filled with unrelenting excitement, a truly original haunted house thriller. Tobe Hooper, director of Poltergeist. 7 Doors of Death. It will scare the hell out of you. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent.
It wasn't until the amazing efforts of Grindhouse releasing that the uncut version was finally shown in American movie houses. Fun fact, Grindhouse's Bob Murawski is a film editor who used a shot from the spider bite sequence in The Beyond in the spider bite dream sequence of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Even the original title of this film, E tu vivere naltere la vida, and you will live in terror, The Beyond is great. I get evangelical about this movie. I promise, if you ever speak to me in person about The Beyond, my eyes will get crazy, I will grow super animated, and make a big deal out of a movie that Roger Ebert famously said about the movie is being revived around the country for midnight cult showings. Midnight is not late enough. This does not matter. We cannot choose what we love. For pure atmosphere, dread, and Fabio Frizzi's incredible music, I end up watching this movie probably every 2 or 3 months. Hopefully you're coming to the drive-in this weekend and watching it. If not, watch it yourself at home and let me know what you think. Our second movie of the second night is a movie that Severin just put out. We're going to be watching the great new Severin version, Opera.
You are invited to enjoy an evening of terror.
Who's there?
Terror at the Opera.
If you try to close your eyes, you'll tear them apart. So you'll just have to watch everything.
She is the captive audience. They are the unreversed players. Evil is the true star. And no matter how hard you try, you won't be able to close your eyes. Director Dario Argento brings fear.
Don't leave me alone. I'm afraid.
Passion. Obsession.
I can take you whenever I want.
And murder to a perfect pitch. Terror at the Opera. The final note is a real killer.
Mara Sakova is a diva and the star of a whole new way of performing Macbeth. But when she's hit by a car, she argues with the director in the middle of the street. Her role goes to her understudy, Betty. Ironically, in his book Profondo Argento, Argento claimed that the person playing the role of Betty, Christina Marsalek, was the most difficult actress he would ever work with. Well, despite her initial worries, Betty becomes an instant success on opening night. At the same time, it's an Argento movie, a black glove killer sneaks into one of the boxes to watch before murdering a stagehand with a coat hanger. That is that late stage abortion that the Republicans are telling you about. Grab your barf bags. Get your motion sickness pills. Argento is behind the camera. Of all the powerful shocks in opera, perhaps the one that means the most to the viewer is that we share Betty's torture. She's repeatedly gagged, tied up, forced to watch the killer at work again and again, even once when he tapes needles under her eyes. So if she blinks too long and shuts her eyes, they'll be shredded. This feels like Lucio Fulci's wettest dream ever. I saw it in Fangoria as a kid and I was so sickened yet obsessed by it. We are almost complicit with the crimes in this movie, particularly they get more and more artful. Betty believes that the hooded killer is the same person who killed her mother, so she follows the giallo path for her protagonist and confides in someone else rather than the police. Her reason, the killer may know who she is. Again, don't defund the giallo police, and also everybody in a giallo is a moron. Inspector Alan Santini, or Bono Barberi, is on the case because there are so many clues, like the fact that the producer's pet ravens were found dead after the show. Betty runs from the cops and calls her agent Miria. Daria Nicolodini, Argento's former wife, as well as the writer Suspiria, for advice. Betty's costume gets cut to ribbons, so she asks the wardrobe girl for help. While working on the dress, they find a gold bracelet they can almost read, but here comes the killer, and he forces Betty to watch as the wardrobe girl swallows the bracelet, so the killer slices through her throat. The camera goes into it. There's blood everywhere. To watch it again. Betty gets back to her apartment as Santini is waiting. He promises to send a detective named Suavi to watch over her. Yep, that's Michelle Suavi, the director of the church, and our next movie, Cemetery Man. She doesn't trust him and leaves the apartment. Her agent answers the next knock on her door by looking through the peephole, and that's the craziest kill in this film, which is saying something, as we follow a bullet, point of view style, out of the gun and directly into the eyeball of the agent. Fulci somewhere is just losing his mind. Nicolodini had just ended a long relationship with Argento and didn't want to be in this movie. However, the shocking and complicated murder of her character changed her mind, even if she had to deal with an explosive device being put on the back of her head to achieve the final shot. And yes, Dario Argento shot his soon-to-be ex-wife in the head. For this movie, she survived. Betty escapes again and runs to the opera house, convinced there's a connection between the murderer and her long-dead and totally abusive mother. The next night, as she performs, the producer unleashes what's left of the Ravens in the hope they find the killer. They do. They tear his eyeball out of his head. Did literally the ghost of Fulci direct this? He wasn't even dead yet. And rewarding you, the viewer, with point-of-view shots that threaten you with throwing up or vertigo. I'm getting dizzy just remembering it. I don't want to give away the killer or the multiple endings. I just want to talk about the sheer Argento-ness of the final scene where Betty wanders in a field and releases a lizard to give him his freedom. Argento claims this ending was inspired by Thomas Harris's Red Dragon. Of interest, Argento does not like the Michael Mann movie Manhunter, which is one of my favorite movies, but you know what? I'd love to see Argento make it. There's also another ending that he thought about where Betty would fall in love with the killer. Your enjoyment of this movie is really going to come down to how much do you love shocking amounts of bloodshed and Argento being arty. He based this film on his own failed staging Macbeth, basing the role of nervous producer on himself. And the idea of pins under the eyes, it comes from a joke about how Argento hated when people looked away from the death scenes in his films. Believe it or not, Orion Pictures planned on releasing an R-rated version of this movie, Terror at the Opera. They're going to cut out 11 minutes and the epilogue. Argento refused. Orion was losing money at a fast clip. The movie saw a limited video release. You can get it from Severin now, and boy, it looks beautiful. Our third movie of the night. You still with me? Is Cemetery Man from 1994, directed by Michelle Suavi, the man in the 90s that would keep the traditions of Italian horror alive.
I'm the watchman of the Buffalora Cemetery.
My name's Francesco Della Morte.
I don't know how the epidemic started. All I know is that some people, on the 7th night after their death, come back to life.
It's true what they say, that the dead come back to life here at night.
With your consent, I'd like to marry Nagy.
Not as long, dear, as I've got a breath in my body.
We'll fix that right away.
Stop killing the dead. Why don't you just kill the living? Are you listening to me?
Don't you believe me?
No.
Tough.
Starting as an actor in films like City of the Living Dead, Aliens 2, On Earth, Demons, and New York Ripper, Suavi became assistant director to greats such as Argento, Lombardo Bava, Terry Gilliam, and he graduated to making his own films, including Stage Fright, The Sect, and The Church. Cemetery is based on the novel Del Morte del Amor. The best translation of that is About Death, About Love. The writer of that, Tiziano Scalavi, also created the comic book Dylan Dog, whose protagonist looks exactly like this film's star, Rupert Everett, and that was also made into a 2011 film. Francesco Del Morte, yes, played by Rupert Everett, takes care of a cemetery. He lives in a shack with Death and his mentally challenged assistant Nagy as his only friends. Quite frankly, his life is pretty crappy. Young punks in town tell everyone he's impotent. His only hobbies are putting together skull-shaped puzzles and crossing out dead people's names in the telephone book. The job he has at night is horrible because the gates read for those who will rise again, because after a week the dead rise from their grave and want to kill the living, and Francesca must kill them. But while watching a funeral, Della Morte falls in love with a widow. He waits for her to visit the graveside of her dead husband, then takes her on a tour of the grounds. As they have sex on the graves, her dead spouse rises and bites her, killing her. Or maybe it's a heart attack, maybe she isn't dead, but then 7 days later, she rises from the dead, and Del Morte must put her down. Nagy falls in love with the mayor's daughter, Valentina. Even when she's decapitated, he won't fall out of love, instead digging up her head and continuing their romance. The widow rises again, leading Del Morte to believe that he was the one who killed her, not her husband. That causes him to go insane or begin seeing the truth as the angel of death appears at him, begging him to stop killing the dead and only kill the living. The widow has become the unattainable object of Del Morte's desire. He even tries to talk to a doctor into removing his penis. So that one aspect of her, the assistant of the new mayor, Valentina, killed her dad when he shunned her new relationship, who isn't afraid of penetration, will fall in love with him. And that relationship ends when she is raped, loses her phobia, and marries her attacker. So Del Morte then goes into town and kills anyone who said he was impotent. Meeting a prostitute in a bar, he realizes she is also his unattainable love. He kills her, everyone in the apartment, by setting it on fire. Well, also Franco, a bookkeeper, has killed his whole family, and the other murders that Del Morte has done are all pinned on him. He drinks iodine to kill himself, but before he dies, Del Morte visits. While visiting, he kills a nun, a nurse, and a doctor, finally trying to confess everything, but no one will believe him. Death reveals himself again and laughs that Del Morte has not figured out the difference between life and death. So our hero packs up the car, grabs Nagy, and tries to escape his town. As they race out of the tunnel, they wreck their car, and Nagy is critically injured. Del Morte begins to fear that the rest of the world has ceased to exist, so he decides to kill himself and Nagy before his assistant is healed, and throws Del Morte's gun off a cliff. They go back home. End of the story. If you're looking for a narrative film that makes a lot of sense, guess what? This isn't it, but if you're seeking a dream meditation of life, love, and loss, this is it. Severin also put this out, and it's shot in a real abandoned cemetery. There are moments of poetic beauty and grace, like when the floating fools fire dance around the graves as Del Morte and she make love. And there are also moments of abject horror and dread, as the film has an incredibly memorable personification of death. Sadly, Swaby would drop out of filmmaking for a while to take care of his sick son in the late 90s and returning to work in TV in the early 2000s. He's made a few other movies, Legend of the Christmas Witch, but I would really like to see him return to horror. But whatever he does, it's always great. Finally, Lombardo Bava brings us the last movie of the drive-in weekend, and that movie is A Blade in the Dark.
Music for movies. Interesting. What are you working on now?
Saving! No! 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 No!
Blade in the Dark was supposed to be a 4-part TV miniseries, with each segment ending with a murder. Just like every Italian director that tried to make a TV series, they were too gory for audiences, so it was released as a film. It was written by husband and wife Dardano Sarchetti and Elisa Brigatti, whose script is often at odds with what Bava seemed to want to put in his film. Bruno is a composer hired to create a soundtrack for a horror movie. He's been having trouble concentrating, so he rents a house to sequester himself. These two women, who used to know his rented villa's former tenant, when they disappear, he's forced to watch the movie he's scoring closer, as he believes there's a clue to a razor-wielding killer's identity hidden within. Bava had worked as Dario Argento's assistant on Tenebrae 2 years before, so this has a big influence on his work. It's also a movie unafraid to wallow in gore. It feels closer to an American slasher than a Jawa. Then again, Lamberto was an assistant to the movie that predates the slasher, His Father's a Bay of Blood. This is a spoiler, but the killer needed to look both male and female. He turned to his assistant, Michel Soave, who went on to direct plenty of great horror on his own. We just talked about one of his films. For those who care about matters like me, Giovanni Frezza, Bob from House by the Cemetery, shows up in this movie within a movie that Bruno's writing the music to. He's taunted by voices that say, "You are a female, you are a female."
Female, you are a female, you are a female, you are a female, you are a female.
Bob, what was it like to be in A Blade in the Dark?
Wow, Sam, thanks so much for having me back. So many shows just make fun of me. And you know, screw the weirdo mutant Last Drive-In fans who didn't get me. That's why I come back to your show. I had a great time on La Casa con la Scala nel Buio and got to stretch the old acting muscles. At least I wasn't being chased by a Civil War surgeon that makes crying baby noises, you know. Well, have to get back to riding around in my Jeep and shooting people like Natasha Hovey. See you soon, Sam.
Also, in the true spirit of Jalo and what that word means, every victim, and the killer, him or herself, is called out by wearing the color yellow. The first time I saw A Blade in the Dark, I thought it was just okay, and I kind of have like a love-hate relationship. I felt like in the past, Lamberto, it's totally changed to love. We watched this in the Drive-In Asylum double feature a while back, and I loved every moment of it. I totally recommend this movie, and I also recommend you come to the Drive-In. We're going to have, I'll have drinks actually, and be serving drinks there, so you can come and get one of my cocktails for free. We'll be trading movies, we'll be hanging out. You can meet Bill as well. You want to reach out to me at any time, you can, it's bnsaboutmovies@gmail.com. You can come to the site, BNS About Movies, and you can watch, we'll be back October 7th for the Drive-In Asylum double feature. It's probably going to be a single feature for the first one, but that'll be the first weekend in October. Look forward to the show coming back. Thanks for listening. The Drive-In, we all know, it's never going to die.
Hey, everybody! Have you heard the news? Bob is back in town. He's over at the house by the cemetery, hanging around, screaming his head off. So come on down to Bob's last drive-in show. Dr. Freudenstein, Manhattan Baby, and more. Bob's last drive-in show. It's an Italian-dubbed marathon with Civil War, surgeons and demons, crazy, kooky fun with a kid with a woman's voice. Yeah, that's me, Mommy. Bob's last drive-in show. It's gonna be legendary. Bob's last drive-in show. It's gonna be very scary. Bob's last drive-in show. Let's go.
Here you want to go to the drive-in? Hell, don't you, American girl?